At 3:42 in the afternoon, local time, the carrier moves through the Caribbean under a calm stretch of sea that experienced sailors never fully trust. The swell is light, visibility is sharp, and the day has that deceptively quiet rhythm where watch rotations blur together. On a ship this large, the loudest sounds are usually the steady breath of the ventilation system and the measured pulse of radar returns. Then the display changes. Inside the Combat Information Center, a fresh surface contact appears at the outer edge of the radar sweep. It is not a merchant ship, not a fishing vessel. Its profile matches a military hull. A few seconds later, another contact appears. Then another. Then two more. 5 surface contacts nearly at once. The radar operator calls it out. The voice stays controlled, professional, but there is a noticeable drag in the cadence now. 5 naval vessels, bearings converging, speed consistent, no commercial identification signals. The system immediately runs an automated comparison against known profiles. Symbols bloom across the screen. Venezuelan Navy, range just over 20 nautical miles. Time to intercept at present speed, less than half an hour. And then the tactical picture reveals something more important. These ships are not staying in a tidy formation. They are spreading apart, opening along multiple lines of approach. 2 continue forward on slightly separated headings. 2 others drift wider, angling toward the carrier's flanks. The 5th remains farther behind, holding distance in a position ideal for observation and control. This is not a simple transit. It is pressure, shaped in real time. The officer of the watch glances out over starboard. To the eye, the sea looks empty. No visible smoke. No obvious wakes nearby. Nothing that would alarm an untrained observer. But below deck on the screens, 5 symbols are moving with purpose. Standard procedure begins. A hail goes out over the International Maritime Frequency. Vessels approaching U.S. naval formation. This is the United States Navy. State your intentions. No reply. The call is repeated, slower this time, clear and deliberate. Then again in Spanish. Still nothing but static. Inside CIC, Aegis shifts from passive surveillance to active tracking. Not a fire control posture, just precision data gathering. Bearings, speed, heading changes measured in fractions of a degree. The system projects future positions and paints ghost tracks across the display. The predicted closest point of approach narrows. One of the Venezuelan ships is now on a path that would bring it uncomfortably close across the carrier's bow if neither side changes course. Not quite a collision path. Something more calculated than that. Close enough to send a message. Close enough to study a reaction. CPA under 5 miles, one watchstander reports. The carrier does not turn. It does not speed up. No alarm reverberates through the ship. No call to general quarters. From the outside, the vessel appears almost indifferent. That is not hesitation. That is procedure. Another radio call is transmitted. Calm, exact, entered into the record. Your present course and speed indicate unsafe maneuvering in international waters. Again, no answer. A note is added to the ship's log. Multiple surface combatants closing. No response to radio hails. The line is short, clinical, almost sterile, but everyone in the room understands the weight behind it. The distance continues to fall. 15 nautical miles. The Venezuelan formation spreads even farther. The 2 lead ships make a subtle increase in speed. The flanking vessels hold steady, widening the geometry. The trailing ship keeps perfect spacing, never rushing forward, never dropping back. Someone mutters what everyone already knows. They are setting the conditions. Above on the flight deck, routine activity continues, but trained eyes catch the difference immediately. A hangar door slides open. Deck crews shift position. Nothing dramatic, just the first visible signs that routine is giving way to readiness. No systems are being openly manned. No aggressive maneuver is ordered. The carrier keeps its course like a fixed point in the water. 10 nautical miles. A new marker appears. The Venezuelan ships are scanning now. Low-power surface search radar. Not targeting radar, not yet, but no longer passive either. Every emission is logged, every frequency captured, every movement time-stamped. This is not only about the next few minutes, it is also about what can be demonstrated afterward. On the bridge, the captain watches the plot in silence. Around him, officers move with quiet discipline. No raised voices, no wasted motion. The tension is not loud, it is compressed. 5 naval ships are closing on a U.S. carrier in international waters. No explanation, no acknowledgement, no meaningful change of course. From the Venezuelan side, it may feel like leverage, a visible display of resolve. Numbers against presence. What they cannot see is the other half of the equation. Sensors that miss nothing. Systems recording every second. Discipline built to turn proximity into evidence. They may believe they are forcing a reaction. What they do not realize is that they have already entered a space where every second is being measured, stored, and weighed. And this is only the opening move. The range continues to shrink minute by minute, with no sign of urgency and no sign of doubt. From the bridge, the approaching ships are still invisible to the naked eye. Inside the Combat Information Center, they are as clear as pieces laid out on a table. 5 contacts, 5 vectors, 1 unmistakable intention. The tactical display refreshes every few seconds as the ships continue to spread. 2 Venezuelan vessels now lead the approach, offset just enough to prevent a simple crossing. They are not rushing. They do not need to. Their speed is deliberate, chosen not to burn distance quickly, but to compress the space around the carrier. The flanking ships widen again, drifting toward positions that could place them abeam of the carrier if allowed to continue. The 5th vessel remains behind, steady and centered, functioning like the eye of the entire movement. This is not random seamanship, it is geometry with a purpose. Inside CIC, officers follow the pattern in silence. The closest point of approach updates again, then again. One projected path brings a Venezuelan hull within only a few miles of the carrier's bow. Another track edges uncomfortably near the port side. The angles are not accidental. They are designed to create pressure without crossing a clear legal line. Gray zone pressure expressed in steel and motion. A junior officer finally says what the room is already thinking. They're shaping us. No one argues. The carrier remains steady. Same heading, same speed, no abrupt turns, no visible signal of concern. The message is plain. We are not moving for you. That decision shifts the burden of the next move onto the approaching ships. Another radio hail goes out, logged and time-stamped, calm and stripped of emotion. Venezuelan naval vessels, you are approaching a U.S. naval formation operating lawfully in international waters. Clarify your intentions. Nothing. And the silence matters. It matters more than a reply might have. Silence removes uncertainty. Silence turns interpretation into record. Below deck, the ship's sensors continue their work without pause. Long-range cameras lock onto the lead Venezuelan vessels. Hull numbers are faint but visible. Deck arrangements match known classes. Older designs, not top-tier platforms, but still armed, still unpredictable at close distance. Electronic support systems detect more emissions now. Surface radars, navigation adjustments, nothing that suggests active targeting, but enough to confirm full awareness. They know exactly where the carrier is. The question is not whether they see it. The question is how close they intend to come. The range slips below 12 nautical miles. The distance changes things. Inside that space, small errors stop being theoretical. A turn judged badly, a signal misunderstood, a mechanical issue at the wrong moment. At sea, steel leaves little room for forgiveness. On the carrier, the air wing remains quiet, but readiness tightens another notch. A Seahawk helicopter crew moves to stand by. No launch order yet, only readiness near the aircraft. On deck, body language shifts in the subtle ways sailors recognize instantly, even when nobody says a word. Prepared, not alarmed. Inside CIC, a plotting officer overlays past encounter data, including previous Venezuelan patrol patterns. This approach does not match normal behavior. It is more coordinated, more assertive, almost practiced. The trailing ship adjusts course slightly, refining its position of control. The lead ships make tiny corrections, preserving the pressure without closing too fast. The flanking vessels widen by another degree, reinforcing the impression of enclosure. From their side, it may feel like momentum. From the carrier's side, it feels like evidence being built in real time. Every adjustment is recorded, every radar sweep preserved, every unanswered hail noted. With each second of Venezuelan silence, the carrier's legal and operational position becomes stronger. Then another CPA update flashes onto the screen. Under 3 miles if nothing changes. The officer of the watch acknowledges it with a small nod. No immediate order follows. This is the part many people misunderstand. They imagine escalation as something noisy. Sirens, shouted commands, systems suddenly coming alive. But the most dangerous moments at sea are often the quiet ones, when every decision is controlled, every signal is measured, and both sides know exactly how much is being tested. Here, escalation doesn't look loud. It looks like restraint sharpened into leverage. The carrier never blinks. By staying on course, it forces the Venezuelan commanders into a tightening dilemma. Either they keep closing and create an unsafe approach that can be documented beyond dispute, or they alter course and reveal that the pressure was more theater than control. There is no comfortable middle ground. The sea stays flat, the sky stays clear, and 5 warships continue moving toward a U.S. aircraft carrier that answers their presence with nothing more than discipline and professionalism. To the Venezuelan crews, that may still feel like control. To the Americans studying the plot, it feels like patience, slowly taking the advantage. Somewhere between 12 and 10 nautical miles, the encounter stops being about movement and becomes about choice. From that point on, every mile matters. At 9 nautical miles, the situation crosses a threshold no one can see from the surface. Nothing looks different outside. The water remains calm. The horizon is still empty. But inside the Combat Information Center, the posture changes. Observation gives way to signaling, not through speed, not through overt force, but through intent. The order comes in short and controlled: launch airborne presence. There are no alarms, no ship-wide announcements, only a chain of familiar actions unfolding exactly as practiced. On the flight deck, a Seahawk helicopter is brought forward. Its rotors begin slowly, then build into a deep, steady rhythm that cuts through the heavy Caribbean air. The aircraft rises cleanly from the deck, banks away from the carrier, and settles into a low, deliberate orbit. This is not just a routine flight. It is a statement. The Seahawk's sensors come online almost immediately. Infrared systems, long-range optics, range-finding tools, all precise down to fine detail. The helicopter does not charge toward the Venezuelan ships. It closes at a measured pace, staying fully within normal international conduct, high enough to be obvious, low enough to be unmistakable. Inside CIC, the live feed appears across multiple screens. The picture sharpens fast. Hull lines, deck layouts, antennas, mounts, crew positions. Detail after detail comes into focus. Out on the water, the Venezuelan formation hesitates. Not dramatically, not in a way an outsider would notice, but enough. One of the lead ships makes a small adjustment. Another steadies its speed. The flanking ships stop widening their angles. The trailing vessel holds position, continuing to watch everything. The Seahawk does not dive, climb, or circle aggressively. It simply remains there, slightly ahead and off the side of the formation, cameras trained, sensors active, presence impossible to ignore. Then the second signal arrives. For only a brief moment, measured in seconds, the carrier's fire control radar comes alive. Not a full targeting posture, not a lock. Just enough energy to be detected, just enough to communicate a simple fact. We see you with more precision than you may be comfortable with. Then it goes quiet again. Inside CIC, every emission is logged, time-stamped, categorized, preserved. On the Venezuelan ships, the signal is impossible to miss. Their sensors catch it. Their operators register it immediately. The meaning is clear. The message is not reckless. It is exact. Moments later, the Seahawk shifts slightly and sends a non-lethal laser cue across the bridge windows of one ship. Bright, unmistakable, but harmless. A visual marker, a silent tap on the shoulder. Then the radio finally speaks again. Venezuelan naval vessel, this is United States Navy aircraft operating in international waters. Your current maneuvers are unsafe. You are being recorded. The message is repeated in Spanish. There is still no immediate reply, but this time the reaction is visible. One Venezuelan ship begins to slow, not abruptly, but enough to register. Another eases a few degrees off its line, creating space instead of squeezing it. The pressure from the flanks loosens almost invisibly, like a grip beginning to relax. The rear ship remains silent, but its role is different now. It is no longer shaping the encounter. It is watching one that has shifted in a direction it did not expect. Because this was never really about intimidation, it was about controlling the story. Every second of video from the Seahawk is archived. Every unanswered hail strengthens the carrier's legal footing. Every unsafe move becomes documentation, not drama. The U.S. Navy does not need to overreact to control this moment. It only needs to remain calm, visible, and correct. From far away, it might look like nothing much is happening. A few ships, a helicopter, open water. But to professionals reading the data, this is the turning point. The moment when pressure runs into proof, when posture meets evidence. The Venezuelan crews are no longer setting the tone. They are responding to it. As the Seahawk holds its quiet orbit, cameras rolling and rotors beating steadily overhead, one conclusion becomes impossible to avoid. They approach to send a signal. Instead, they found themselves receiving one. The first indication is subtle, as it usually is. No sharp turn, no sudden withdrawal, no admission over the radio, just numbers shifting on a screen. Speed dropping by half a knot, then a little more. A heading change so small it almost passes for coincidence until it continues. Inside CIC, the plot refreshes and stabilizes. One of the Venezuelan lead ships is no longer tightening the approach. Its wake shortens. Its projected closest point of approach begins to widen instead of shrink. Contact 1 is slowing, a watchstander says. No one reacts outwardly, no one raises a voice. The Seahawk remains exactly where it is, patient and steady, recording every change. Then a second ship follows. Its bow drifts a few degrees away from the carrier's axis. Not enough to look like retreat, but enough to break the geometry that had made the squeeze work. The flanking ships begin to hesitate. Their outward arcs stop growing. Then, little by little, they begin to fold inward. The formation is losing its shape. For several long seconds, nothing else changes. The sea remains calm. The helicopter holds altitude. The carrier continues forward as though this were just another uneventful passage. Then, at last, the radio crackles. United States naval vessel, this is Venezuelan Navy unit. We are conducting sovereign patrol operations near Venezuelan waters. The wording is careful, non-committal, crafted to preserve face. The reply from the bridge comes back immediately, even and without emotion. Venezuelan naval vessel, this is United States Navy. We are operating lawfully in international waters. Your recent maneuvers are unsafe. You are being monitored and recorded. No threats, no emotion, just facts. The transmission ends. Silence returns. But the balance of the encounter has already shifted. One by one, the Venezuelan ships begin to peel away. Not together, not dramatically, but in sequence. The lead ship cuts speed again and turns to starboard, opening space in front of the carrier's bow. A flanking vessel mirrors the move minutes later, easing outward rather than inward. The trailing ship, which had maintained its command position throughout, makes the final adjustment, increasing distance and slipping back beyond the tight zone it had once controlled. The squeeze is finished. Inside CIC, the change is unmistakable. Closest point projections widen across the board. Risk markers begin to fall. What had been a tightening encounter now becomes an orderly separation. The Seahawk stays airborne a while longer, making sure the movement is sustained and not temporary. Its sensors continue feeding clean, undeniable footage into the ship's system. Hulls turning away, speeds evening out, distance increasing. Only when the Venezuelan formation is clearly disengaging does the helicopter begin to climb and angle back toward the carrier. Still, there is no visible celebration. This was never about winning in a dramatic sense. There are no headlines yet, no official statements, no flags waving in triumph. But the point has been made, and more importantly, it has been understood. The Venezuelan Navy did not pull back because it was attacked. It pulled back because it was being watched. It pressed against the boundary and found no weakness there. It tried to create pressure and discovered that restraint, when carried out with discipline and backed by a full record, can weigh more than open aggression. As the distance grows, the encounter shrinks into a chain of hard facts. Timestamps, radar tracks, video records, course changes, every piece preserved for review, for briefings, for any setting where evidence matters more than performance. Aboard the carrier, normal rhythm returns. The Seahawk comes back down. The deck is secured. Watches continue. To anyone looking from the outside, it might seem like nothing happened at all. But for the officers who watched 5 warships close in and then peel away without a single shot being fired, the lesson is unmistakable. In modern naval confrontations, control is not always defined by force. Sometimes it comes from patience, clarity, and the quiet confidence to let the other side make the first obvious mistake. And this time, they did. By the time the distance opens back into safe margins, the encounter is already finished. No alarms have to be silenced, because none were ever triggered. No systems need to be stood down, because none were ever pushed into open action. The Caribbean settles back into its calm surface, as though no one had tested the boundary at all, as though a carrier had never been pressed in the first place. But underneath that calm, something lasting remains. Inside the ship's systems, the encounter survives as data. Every course correction, every ignored radio hail, every radar emission, every second of imagery gathered by the Seahawk's sensors. What looked like a brief stretch of tension on open water has been turned into a complete, time-stamped narrative. And that is the part most people overlook. Venezuela did not approach that carrier by accident. This was not confusion at sea or a patrol commander acting on impulse. It was deliberate pressure applied in the narrow space between peace and open conflict. Close enough to intimidate, careful enough, at least in theory, to avoid immediate consequences. That was the idea. What Venezuela misread was not American capability. Everyone understands what a carrier group represents. The real miscalculation was assuming restraint meant passivity. The U.S. Navy treated restraint as a tool, not a limitation. The carrier never maneuvered in a way that looked reckless. It never changed its tone on the radio. It never escalated in a way that could easily be reframed as provocation. Instead, it did something far more damaging to the entire strategy behind the approach. It stayed on the right side of the line. By holding course, the carrier denied Venezuela the reaction it was likely trying to draw out. By recording every movement, it turned the encounter from perception into proof. By responding only within established operational rules, it pushed the Venezuelan commanders into a smaller and smaller set of choices. None of them good. Move closer, and the approach becomes harder to justify under maritime law. Hold position, and the pressure loses its edge. Pull away, and the message collapses. That is the trap built by disciplined restraint. This is also why aircraft carriers are no longer just symbols of strength. They are hubs of awareness, floating command centers that turn proximity into evidence and posturing into liability. Any ship that comes too close leaves behind a trail. Radar behavior, signals, communication patterns, timing, reactions on deck. Long after those hulls disappear over the horizon, analysts will still be studying what they left behind. For Venezuela, the encounter ends quietly. No dramatic announcement, no clear public win, no footage powerful enough to sell a victory at home. 5 ships approached, 5 ships turned away, nothing concrete to show for the effort. For the United States Navy, the result carries far more weight. It showed control without brute force. It reinforced legal standing without direct confrontation. It sent a message to everyone paying attention, allies and rivals alike, that professionalism backed by patience is much harder to challenge than aggression backed by noise. And there is no doubt others were paying attention. At sea today, nothing happens in isolation. A close approach in the Caribbean is studied far beyond the Caribbean. Every gray zone maneuver becomes a case study for planners in capitals nowhere near the water where it happened. This encounter will be analyzed not because of what nearly happened, but because of how little needed to happen for the situation to turn. The lesson is not that Venezuela was weak. The lesson is that pressure without real escalation tends to collapse when it meets a force that refuses to blink. Because in modern naval strategy, the most dangerous ship is not always the one that acts first. Sometimes it is the one that stays calm long enough to let the other side expose itself. So the real question left behind by this encounter is simple. Should the United States answer more forcefully the next time 5 warships move in close? Or is discipline, documentation, and restraint still the smarter answer in a world where one bad decision can echo far beyond the horizon? Share your view in the comments. Out in international waters, power is not always loud. Sometimes power is the side that stays silent and still gets the last word.